It's like the Gingers. It's like that is a stereotype of Scottish national identity. And yet it's only a minority of the population. So you're trying to take what people understand and then actually show the wider reality. And people don't always like that.
I'm here with Kieran Dodds, who's an award-winning photographer from Scotland.
Ooh.
Yes. Has just multiple awards, front page shots on magazines and newspapers that you definitely know about, like the New York Times, Smithsonian, Geo, Wall Street Journal, Instagram's blog, BBC Wildlife. I mean, just so many things, like a real artist and somebody who's done also documentary photography and just so many things. Welcome here, Kieran.
Thank you.
So such a pleasure.
To your lovely library. Come closer.
I pushed the microphone in your face. Care to comment, sir?
Interrogation.
Care to comment, sir,
Speak
about
into the
this?
microphone.
I'm just so excited to talk about images and photography and just really anywhere the conversation goes. I wonder, my first question I thought to ask you as a professional, like fine art, serious photographer is, all of us are bombarded by images.
Yes.
Like I go on social media, you go on a subway, you're just seeing like never before in human history have people produced this many images.
Yeah.
I don't know, like as someone who does this professionally, what do you make of it? How do you sort it out? Do you feel like it's overwhelming? Is it bad? How do you think about it?
There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
I do feel quite depressed quite a lot. It's not the way to start my inspirational
That's okay. We'll
podcast.
get there.
But it's the sheer volume can be overwhelming. Like every morning you open your phone and there's just this stream of amazing work.
Yeah.
I mean, there's dross, but there's just amazing photographs from around the world.
Yes.
And so in my head, I can feel like, why bother? Like, am I just adding to this kind of huge digital ocean with my tiny drop?
Right.
But I think the way I've rationalized it over the years is the fact that photography is so popular because it's universal in its scope and appeal. You can photograph everything in human life. And also it's universal in application. You've got every kind of camera going on in the world, helmet cameras, space cameras, the underwater cameras. There's so many cameras, so you're going to get a lot of photographs.
Right.
So I think I've rationalized it to be like the sheer volume should astound us because it shows the infinite capacity for humans to seek meaning in the universe and to want to understand it.
Wow.
Now, a lot of the photographs are selfies, so I don't think they're seeking deep understanding. But even then, people are taking photographs of their children and the picture on your wallpaper is something significant to you. So there's billions of photographs in the world. There's an artwork by a guy called Eric Kessels, a Dutch artist, and it's just a pile of photographs from 24 hours on Flickr, just 24 hours of uploads, which dates it. And it's just this mass. It's just a trash pile. And looking at that, I think, wow, what a waste. And then you think one photograph, if it was my daughter's, that has infinite value in the eye of the one watching. And so I do feel honestly, I despair sometimes. I think, what am I contributing? But then when I take photographs, it also is mimicking something in the human experience. Like your eye, it's got a lens, it's got an aperture, like a camera. It's got a retina, which is a digital sensor. And a phone becomes an extension of your brain and your heart. It's gathering information to understand. And so I try and keep that positivity. And also when I take photographs, I feel I have to. It's like a response to seeing beauty or to ugliness. I need to respond. And for me, like some people will write, some people will do some music, but for me it's responding in taking a photograph or making a photograph and trying to process what I'm seeing.
What you're saying though, the phone being an extension of your eye, of your heart, that's actually a very affirming, positive way to see the phone and the phone camera.
Yeah.
Because, I don't know, maybe someone would think, a professional photographer, a real artist, they would see this as just like trash. But really, it's almost like you could say when you open your phone and you start looking at all these pictures, you're seeing people's hearts. Yeah. And you're seeing their desires and their fears and all these things.
Yeah. And that's why when people, as they do, take out their phones and say, I've got a picture. They show you, force their pictures on you and you're like, oh, great. But actually, I'm usually happy to because it gives you an insight into the person.
Yeah.
It shows you if they can take photos or not, but usually it shows you what they value, what they look towards, what they're interested in. So it does reveal the heart.
Right.
And I think that is, I prefer if they edit it down because they might show me, I don't want to see hundreds of your pictures. Like, show me your pictures, but like, show me 12.
Yeah, show me one photo.
Or one picture and explain
show me your best
to me
one.
exactly what they're interested in.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you think that photography just out there in general is because of the competition and the volume you spoke of, even from professionals and artists, do you think it's getting better?
Oh,
Or do you think it's kind of just like it kind of peaked? It's as good as it's ever going to be. Back when the camera was invented, we figured it out, and it's just like more. Or is it like, are people improving?
That's interesting. I mean, even the assumption in that, like, what is a good picture? What is better?
Yeah.
And I suppose my standard for what is a good picture is something which the intent of the artist or the viewer is able to make that into an image, and whether that can be conveyed to somebody else. So I think the first photographers. So in Scotland, we've got Hill and Adamson, who were early documentary photographers. One was a chemist, actually. One was a painter. And they worked together, pioneering this calotype process, salt print, which they nicked, actually. They nicked the process of an English guy, but it wasn't copyright in Scotland, so they could use it. And they pioneered it. And they photographed, like, fisherwives in parts of Edinburgh, New Haven. And those photographs are astounding. You see them, and they do what a photograph should do. They freeze time, and they also expand time, and they draw you back. So there's work from the early centuries that is like, what more do you want? You know, it's like, if it's done
that's as good as it could be. It's beautiful. It's raw.
It's almost honest. Like we're trying to get back to that. And again, I think the challenge with time, though, is relating it to ourselves. And photographs today, we don't always appreciate what we're viewing because it's so familiar.
Yeah.
And it takes us to be a bit distant from it. So if you see a photograph, say, of downtown Glasgow where I am, or Portland where you are, from like 20 years ago, and you look at the cars and you look at the space and you suddenly appreciate what was there and what is lost.
Right.
And I think the challenge today is to come up with images that stop you in your tracks, but then keep you there. They have something more going on, not just visually arresting and aesthetic, but there's a kind of deeper narrative level.
One other visual form that has been very ascendant that I've noticed when I open my phone or I look on my computer is video. What does video do for the relevancy of photography? Do you think photography becomes more urgent? Does it become more frantic, like trying to show that photography is relevant in the face of this moving picture that's everywhere?
Yeah. I think video for me has always been a separate thing, but equal. There's overlap, of course. They do overlap. I was going to say they're non-overlapping magisteria, but they do. There is overlap.
Yeah.
And the stills photography for me, I've often found trying to tell clients, they come to me and say, can you do photographs? And then, could you do some video as well? And I'm like, yes, but I think they're different things. And you could spend all your time trying to get a photograph and all your time trying to get a video. And I think that's actually better because they are different things. I still, like you're referring to, like social media, like Instagram is promoting Reels, or YouTube, which is my favorite platform, actually.
YouTube is your favorite platform? Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, even though it's movies. But it's because people talking, it's ideas.
Yeah.
But for photographs, I think they do something different. You put them on a wall and you should stop people. They are a slice in time, and it's like 4 dimensions of space and time have been frozen, and it allows you to pause and meditate, like a painting. If it's good anyway, it should stop you in the tracks and make you think. Whereas a video can do that over a longer term. It can immerse you and uses a different language.
Right.
But I feel like photography is its own thing.
Yeah.
And I've seen people who start in photography and then transition to video. They see that as the evolution. I'm like, you can do that. That's great. And I know some great sort of filmmakers. But it's about, I've been doing this for 20 years now, and I still haven't scratched the surface. I'm still trying to be able to be good at this. And I've got a long way to go.
Wow.
Hopefully.
You use this phrase a few times when talking about a photograph stopping someone in their tracks. What does that in a photo for you? Or when you've taken a photo that you feel has that effect? Or when you've seen a photo recently that you felt had that effect? Yeah. Can you describe what it had that would make a person stop like that?
I think there's 3 elements, I think, to making a good photograph, the perfect photo. The aesthetic has got to look like impactful, but that can vary. That could be like bright colors or brash light, or it could be subtle and intriguing.
What the kids call the vibe these days.
The vibe, the
vibe of the photo, just the overall kind of impression, look, color,
vibe,
what's happening.
Yeah, the feels. So you got the aesthetic, but you've also got the technical aspects. Like they've managed to do something technically interesting, and you're not thinking about the technicalities. Like almost the photographer and the process is removed from it sometimes. But then the third aspect for me anyway is meaning. It's trying to get the narrative into it. And that is what I feel sets apart photojournalism and documentary from somebody who's just taking nice pictures of things. Or at least when that person forces me to look at their photographs, there's a meaning for them in that photograph, but it doesn't communicate.
Right.
And I think for me, for a photo to have impact, it needs to have a transcendent meaning. It's got to be able to get across to me.
Right.
It doesn't just communicate to that person, say, this feels nice for me and it's my vibe. It's got to somehow have crossed over into, I understand that now.
Right. What's a photo of yours? We could probably even link it below or flash it up on the screen if it's already on the internet, let's say. Like, what's a photo of yours that you think, you'd put that up there and say, this is a photo people have stopped and looked at and said, what is this? What's happening here?
Yeah, I think the gingers ones do, because they're quite colourful.
Yeah.
And ginger hair is intriguing. But I'm actually going to say the other series of pictures that I think have done that are my church forest of Ethiopia pictures. And they are these aerial shots of forests that surround circular church buildings in Ethiopia.
Yes, I've seen those photos, yes.
And so they, I think, intrigue people because when you see them as a typology, a group, you're like, oh, there's a circular building in all of them. And the forest is different. And for me, I've got one of them as I go into my house on the wall, partly because it was for an exhibition, I've not sold it, but also because I want it. It was an artist proof. And every day I walk past it, and it pleases me because I think it's aesthetic, it looks the part. I managed to overcome technical hurdles to do it. And the meaning to me is significant, but also when I look at the picture, I see different lines where people have walked, or I see a building where somebody lives I hadn't noticed before. So I think there's layers to that. So I think that, and other people have said that. I'm not just saying my photos stop me in my tracks all the time.
I put you on the spot to tout your work here.
Oh, there's plenty.
But I've seen this image.
Do you know what picture actually? It's recent. It's a friend actually who's produced a book called Andrew McConnell, and he's done a series on in Kazakhstan where the rockets go into space and then where the capsules return.
Yeah.
So, and it's Russian astronauts and Americans and Europeans. But in that series, there are so many pictures that astound me because the scenery is so barren. And then you have this futuristic capsule burnt up and smoke. And the whole series, I think, that for me, it's stories like that. It's a story as well that just, they reveal new things to you, but in a way that just, you think, wow, is that real?
Yeah. I've heard photographers and read photographers talking about this issue of telling a story with a photo or telling, or even telling the truth with a photo.
Yeah.
So huge concepts. Why are photographers so intent on talking about telling a story with a photo? Is it because, unlike video, it is a still frame and you've got to do something with that? Is that where the storytelling impulse comes from, or is it something else? Why do photographers talk about telling a story with a photo?
I think it's because the universe is made of stories. And I think when a photographer is taking a picture, they're thinking about something. They're part of a story. They're walking through a story and they're seeing something. So I think a photo is made, as Ansel Adams said, with every person you've loved, every book you've read, every piece of art you've seen. So there's a lot coming into the making of a photograph. So there's a lot more there. We might not see it, but I think the storytelling, there's partly, it became quite trendy to talk about visual storyteller, and now they're moving away from that. But I think also it's a particular part of art, because some lens-based artists would say that actually the photograph doesn't have any meaning. It's just whatever it means to you, or it's purely process-based. It's not a narrative-driven. Whereas I think my tradition, documentary, photojournalism, it's a story tradition. So I can have a press card for the National Union of Journalists in the UK because I write a caption for a picture, and you're trying to tell a story for the newspaper, for example, for the New York Times. The photograph is the first thing you see, and it has to visually arrest you, but also tell you something or intrigue you about what's happening. Yeah. Sometimes it's that thing about a picture's worth 1,000 words.
Right.
It is, the universe is shedding stories, and a good photograph is able to capture something of that.
Yeah. I mean, maybe some artists, for really deep reasons, I'm not putting this down, maybe some artists and some photographers truly believe that there isn't really a coherent story to even be told.
Yeah.
Whereas the tradition that you're saying you work in, you believe there is a story.
Yes. In documentary and photojournalism, I mean, that is the underlying philosophy, isn't it? It's like we believe we need to tell stories and narratives. And yeah, some philosophies will say it's just stuff floating out there. Right. And it doesn't mean anything. It's meaningless, but it intrigues me, and I'm trying to find meaning in this cloud of unknowing.
Right.
But I think where I'm coming from, and I studied zoology at university, so I'm from a scientific
Oh, really?
sort of field of view.
Oh, fascinating.
And so going into journalism originally was a natural leap. You're trying to understand the world, and then you're trying to communicate it as well. So a story is the natural way humans communicate. And I think as well, we communicate through visual stories. So when you go into a forest, maybe our ancestors were better at this, they could understand the landscape. They could see a plant, and that told them an animal had been through, or it tells them there's food here, or it tells them there's water nearby. So you read things visually all the time. You're reading stories in the landscape if you're informed. Or if you're downtown, you can see a sign, or you know where the coffee shop is. Right. You can tell a coffee shop from outside if it's trendy or not. So we are visual readers.
Right. One of the earliest philosophers I think that people point to who spoke in a kind of organized way about images philosophically was Plato, who actually had this view, I think, I'm remembering my philosophy here vaguely, who thought that images were like a lie, that they were like copies of copies of copies, and they were never the real thing. Yeah. And it made me think in terms of just you talking about these different philosophies of the image and what they could even be. It made me wonder, from your perspective, as a photographer, as an artist, I don't know, like, do you have a sense when you look at some images, like you feel like some images are telling the truth and some images are actually lying? Like, what would it mean for an image to lie? Or did you ever take a picture and edit and feel like, this is a lie, or there's something here that's not true? And like, what does that mean? Like, how do you do that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's always a live discussion in photojournalism and documentary. So even I changed my title to non-fiction photographer for a while, because it felt problematic with photojournalism, and there was all this talk of, people think that's pertaining to the truth. And that's a whole can of worms I don't want to go into. But in terms of, in photojournalism, there's people out there who are desperately keen to show what is reality. So maybe not the truth, but like reality as we see it. It's not purely subjective. There is something beyond that person's view. They are trying to show facts and reality in a way. And there has been times when I've taken a photo, and I don't think it's like that is a lie, but I just think that is maybe not a helpful depiction of this reality. And I'm always thinking that, especially when I'm cross-cultural. Like in Ethiopia, I was always seeing things, and as an outsider, you're like, well, that's interesting, click.
Right.
And so you're then learning and speaking to people, and you're trying to balance what you're seeing and what you're drawn to with actually, does this fit reality as it is, rather than how I see it? Right.
Or taking objects and subjects and people and almost, I don't know, like objectifying them for someone else's gaze. You might see it as exotic or strange or think, oh, that's, just weird or maybe arrest someone's attention in the wrong way.
Yes, exactly. And it's that thing that really, like, I feel I've succeeded if I've represented something truly as it is, or towards what it should be. So one example I remember was at an exhibition of the church forest work, and there's a picture of a tree. It's like a skeletal tree. It's been hit by lightning, and there's the moon behind it rising. And it's a beautiful walk into the forest that day. And I remember at the exhibition down in Orange County, it was on the wall, and there was this conference we had with scientists and theologians and me and some artists talking about these forests and the sort of role of theology in the landscape. And I remember seeing these three lads from Ethiopia doing selfies. And I was like, guys, what are you doing?
Like with the picture?
Yeah, they were just like, or taking pictures of themselves. And I was like, guys, what are you doing? This is great. And they were just like, oh, you've shown us where we live, but in a new way. We've always lived through this landscape growing up, but we hadn't seen it like this. So not only had I managed to somehow represent it as it was in their minds, but also show them something new. And I think that was... I just think, wow, if I can manage that, I'm an outsider coming in. So it gives you a fresh perspective, because it makes you attend to the things that others neglect because they're not thinking about it.
Right.
But you've also got to do the work to understand how the local people understand it, and then maybe take it another way. So that's sometimes it works.
Yeah.
Not always. But Scotland, I mean, people depict Scotland always like
bagpipes and fog and rolling hills and stuff like that.
And it's got that in spades, and swords and things. But it's trying to use that. It's like the gingers. It's like that is a stereotype of Scottish national identity. I'm the stereotype, pale and ginger. And yet it's only a minority of the population. So you're trying to take what people understand and then actually show the wider reality. And people don't always like that because romanticism is comfortable.
Yeah.
Like to see something, whatever romanticism. But it's people want to see a certain view and they want to be caught up in that story they understand. If you're American coming into Scotland, you want that. You want the mist. And if I come in and say, well, that hill over there is owned by a company in Panama, it kind of it breaks the spell.
Right.
And so you've got to do it gently and carefully. But
Well, yeah, and in looking at your Gingers series online, which is the most prominent thing, if people search, and we'll put a link below to some of the images, they're really just stunning images. You have these people with all these different shades of red hair, or whatever color you want to call that, orange, or the kind of blonde. But then you also have some people too on whom maybe people wouldn't imagine red hair, or different kinds of things, different kinds of bodies, different kinds of faces. That really does challenge that idea of like, who should look like this, or how do people really look?
Yeah. And originally I'd set about, it was around the time of the Scottish independence referendum. So we're voting on, should we be our own nation? And I thought of all these different stories to do with Scottish national identity. And Gingers was one of them, one of 5. And so I thought, well, people think we're all ginger, but 13% maximum are. And I want to show that group even is incredibly diverse.
Yes.
They don't think the same. They don't
I can see
even
that.
look the same.
I can see that in the pictures really clearly.
And then I realised very early on, the gene was discovered in Edinburgh, and the scientist who was doing the research, I looked at his papers online, and one of them was about the MC1R ginger gene and melanoma, skin cancer in Jamaica. So I was like, wow, do you get this in Jamaica?
Yeah.
And so then I went down the rabbit hole, and there was this place in Jamaica, there was a couple of places, but this place I went to eventually, Treasure Beach, where there's red hair and darker skin. And then also on this map, this dubious map of distribution, had Scotland, of course, the Celtic fringe, and then it had Russia, this hotspot in Russia. And so early on, I discovered it's not just a Scottish thing, it's a global trait. And I thought it was quite a fun thing to be able to use something visual, again, visual story, to show we are all made of the same stuff across the world, from Russia to Jamaica. And in between, like in London, people from Israel, people from France, people from England, to try and use the trait for that. And that's why I've come to America as well, because I did a book on it in 2020, self-published, and it got huge publicity, which is good for selling books, but also like unexpected. And then I had people from America getting in touch, people from sort of backgrounds from Afghanistan, from Mexico, Native Americans. And I thought it's actually quite a fun story to work on, even though it's the setup is the same, the background's the same, the lens and the camera is the same, everything's the same. But then when someone comes in, I'm always surprised. I'm always delighted.
Some of those photos in that series that I saw, they almost looked to me, I don't know if it was like an editing effect you used or something about the lens. They almost looked like paintings, like those hyper-realistic Dutch Flemish paintings from that, and the way that you had people stylized and just this intense focus on their faces made me think, as a Christian, as someone who thinks about theology and faith in the Bible, just about this issue of people being made in the image of God and having to stop and focus and look at a person, whether they're a ginger or a Jamaican ginger or somebody like from anywhere. It was just like, it did cause that feeling in me, at least as a viewer, of having to stop and really think about like, wow, this is a human body. And people have like made a lot of jokes about gingers, and it's become like this cultural kind of meme and so on. To like stop and look at it like that.
Yes, and it's one of the few traits left where you can stop and stare, and that's okay, you know. And it is more beautiful than you can imagine. So even if you make jokes, it's fine. But yeah, that was it. The whole foundation of it is that sense that humans are made of the same stuff. Like we are across the world. And it harks back to the image of God, Imago Dei idea. And actually one of the inspirations, not just the politics of Scotland, was the National Gallery of Scotland, early Renaissance paintings. All the paintings in the room were from sort of Southern European artists depicting the Middle Eastern characters. And every painting had a ginger person in it. Really? It was usually Jesus.
Really?
Or Mary.
Oh, fascinating.
And so in that, I thought, wow, I mean, we're divine, that's cool. But also, the artist was doing something to draw the eye to the main character, but it was some kind of golden halo or like a crown, like a king. So I thought there's all this symbolic meaning involved. And it was quite different to my upbringing, where even in Scotland, you were bullied for it or mocked. I didn't get bullied bad. And South Park, of course, like coming up with Gingers Have No Souls. And it just felt such a different counterbalance, and that inspired the aesthetic as well, which was kind of Dutch golden era paintings. Again, when they couldn't paint religious scenes. They painted the domestic scenes, and yet their pictures of domestic scenes, everyday life, reality as it was, have lasted to this day with this deep resonance because they were forced to just paint normal things instead of the pre-Reformation religious paintings.
That's really fascinating. That's really fascinating.
But I didn't do much editing. You were saying about editing.
Oh yeah, no,
I'm quite lazy and I'm
me
quite
about
unskilled.
Tell me because I wanted to ask too about like filters. Like when I use Instagram,
Yeah.
Instagram is also one of my favorite social media apps. I just love the images. I just
Yeah.
love art. I just love looking at the stuff. It's
yeah.
just like, and
I
it's,
can do.
you can be kind of passive with it, which is maybe bad, but it allows you to take in a lot.
Yeah.
And I love I love the filters partly because they feel so fake sometimes and it feels so affected. But then I also think, no, I was here in this forest, I was by this tree, and it felt like this, and the picture that came out didn't feel like I felt.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to like get back to, I'm trying to add that aesthetic or that vibe,
Yeah, the
to
vibe,
it.
the vibe.
I don't know. How do you think about that as a professional photographer, adding that vibe or that filter versus the kind of work you might do where you're able to, I don't know, manipulate differently?
Yeah. I mean, we all edit, but we edit before we take the photograph. So people think of post-production as the editing, but actually you're editing when you're thinking, but also when you raise the camera, you've taken that tiny slice of the landscape. So you're already editing from the start. In terms of then how much post-production you do to get back to that, I'm quite lazy. I try and not have too much to do afterwards. So basically, I prefer to do it in camera. So you light it so that when you take it,
like it's a workflow thing. Like
Yeah,
the
it
more
is.
you do
Yeah,
beforehand.
yeah.
I thought this about seeing professional photographers, how few pictures sometimes they'll take. Whereas I'll pick up a camera and just go, because I'm afraid of not getting the shot.
Yeah.
Whereas maybe like you've developed a certain kind of confidence, like you know how it's going to look pretty much.
Sometimes. I'm still sketching when you take it, so you're kind of working out what you're doing. But I think having the light set up, so that for the ginger specifically, I do very little. And again, if you're shooting a like story for the New York Times, there tends to be a style they use, which is to like have a very sort of high range from the highlights to the low, and often they make them very dark and moody.
Yeah.
So they'll edit. It doesn't take away the truth, but again, you go.
You're saying they do it. So
yeah. Well, I mean,
you'll turn it over and they'll fix it.
I'm not saying it's fake news. I'm saying photographers tend to edit for the feel of what they saw and felt. So if it's a news site, it tends to be it's a bit darker, a bit grittier, and so that the editing will give that feel. I think that still means the picture has integrity. It's still depicting reality,
Right.
but it just reflects the mood better.
Yeah.
So it's not affecting the factual content, but it just affects the feel of it.
I see. I think, wow, we're just scratching the surface of so many things that are so interesting. I really enjoyed talking to you. I want to do this forever, but we can't. So I want to ask you in closing this one thing. Whether the bombardment of images is terrible or not, we're gonna keep getting the phone out. We're all gonna keep taking 9,000 pictures per month and so on. What kind of advice would you give average people with their camera on their phone and no other camera for just taking better pictures? Could be technical, or it could even be more like philosophical or spiritual. Even like, how do we take better pictures? In your view?
Well, take more. Actually, you get better taking more. But I think the intentional thought is important. So I spoke at the art talk this week, and in that I gave them two useful, I thought, tips to go away with. The first was to make photographs, so to bring to it that conscious process. You're not taking something; you're actually you're bringing things together. You're constructing something. So making photographs, I think, is probably the first thing. So when you're raising it, you're thinking about what you're photographing, and consciously making it and reading stuff. I remember a friend said, if your pictures aren't good enough, you're not reading enough. Oh. And I think you have to have understanding of what you're photographing. That's why with families, we kind of understand our families. So people take photos of them, and often the family pictures will be better than the studio ones, sometimes, depending on the professional. So that would be it. Make photographs, take a sort of consciously constructive mindset. Secondly, relates to this huge big flood, this digital purgatory in the cloud of all these pictures. It's to actually just bring them into reality. Because a photograph, you're depicting the physical 4D space and time. And almost like if you make it into digital, you bring it back into the physical realm, is the completion of it. The photographic process for me finishes once the photograph's been taken and edited. And then it's printed and it has a life of its own. And I feel like actually when you make a photograph, actually make a physical photograph, I think you come up with something which is a have lasting value, something you can reflect on and look at, and which has this echo into eternity. It's a slice in time, but as you look at it and you remember, you expand your perception of time as well. So I think that'd be the two things. It's the same point, but just emphasis on the make and emphasis on the photographs.
Yeah, and I could totally see how printing out more of our photographs, even those self-published little books you can make online, and having those that way could actually get you more in that mood of making rather than taking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so great. Thank you so much, Kieran. This has been so fun.